our first panel that we want to talk about looks at agencies that have transformed from segregated services to inclusive services. Suzy Hutcheson has been the president and chief executive officer of Helping People Succeed since August 1977. That's in Florida. In that capacity, she's led that organization through major organizational change from a sheltered workshop activity center to a totally community-based organization focused on employment and community inclusion opportunities. She believes that all people who have a disability should have the opportunity and right to be a full participating member of the community. She's done some amazing things down there. We've heard about her for years, and now we have her here in Iowa.
Huh? Said I'm quite old.
No, you started when you were 5. That's what I did. Bryan, Dague, EDD, is from Vermont, and he works at the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion at the university there for the past 19 years. He provides training and technical assistance in the area of support, employment, and transition. In 2006, he got his doctorate in Ed Leadership and Policy Studies from the University of Vermont. His dissertation was Sheltered Employment, Sheltered Lives, Navigating the New Realities of Community Employment. And he focused on he worked closely with the last sheltered shop that converted to community services and looked at the impact it had on families as well as the people that were working there. He's been involved in conversion of sheltered workshops to community-based employment services in Syracuse, New York, as well as in Vermont. And he's also co-president of the Vermont chapter of APSE. They also hold a conversion institute, would that be what it's called? Yes. Institute every other year, of helping agencies who would like to become more community-based in their services. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to tell us their story about how it worked for them.
Is this turned on? You can hear me? Okay, good. I won't sing. Good morning. Thank you so much, and thank you, Iowa APSE, for all that you've done. I love the little bags. It's always great to get something that's different and probably that I'll actually use. So I didn't put on my introduction, but I'm actually a former president of APSE National, and I'm a member, probably almost a lifetime member of Florida APSE. So I am totally in tune with all of the values, et cetera, with APSE. And I actually have a PowerPoint that I decided not to use because it would have taken me all day because I tend to talk a lot. So I do have copies of it that I'll put out if anybody wants to take it, because it will have a little more information than what I'll tell you about today and contact information. I like to tell people that our organization, Helping People Succeed, is in the 26th year of a 3-year conversion plan. So that the reality is that it's a journey that we thought would take 3 years, and really and truly, I don't think it will ever end, because if it ever stops, then you're not really doing what you need to be doing to help the people that we serve become, tax-paying members of our community. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey, and you're going to keep time, right? Yep. Okay. So that I guess Bryan has something to say. I'm not sure, but I figured I'd give him a little bit of time anyhow. What I'm not going to be able to do is tell you some of the fun stuff that we did and some of the really interesting, not interesting, but for example, when we first started, we didn't have any public transportation. We're a fairly rural, although we're considered metropolitan now. The only way we didn't have any taxi service, so we used a limo driver to get folks to work. So the limo would come in the afternoon and pick up a few people. I'm not telling you we did it all right then. And one time our state monitors came in and they asked one of the folks that we served, whose is that? And they said, oh, it's Suzy's. It's hers. Because it's, so there have been some interesting things that have happened along the way. I did kind of follow the format of what led us to the decision, et cetera. So just to give you a little bit of history, our organization was founded in 1964 by a group of parents who wanted more for their sons and daughters with intellectual disabilities than staying home watching TV. I think we probably have a similar history to lots of people. In the 70s, we started doing workshop work, activity work, and training programs. In the 80s, we found supported employment. And what led us to that decision was truly a variety of things. I was totally bored with what we were doing. I saw no value really in continuing to have people go through different training programs, and also really and truly the production work we were doing, which is probably similar to what a lot of people do. Anything you can put together or take apart or put in an envelope, we were very, very good at. But people weren't making a lot of money, and there was no door and no way out. So we really, as a matter of fact, I was actually looking for another job at that time because I just felt like I wasn't being effective in any way. Well, we heard about supported employment and decided that really and truly that was the way we needed to go. It gave both a front door and a back door. It gave us the opportunity to maybe make some difference. I think when we first heard about it, we probably thought, like a lot of people did, we're good at this. If it was possible, we'd already be doing it. Well, we started listening to all of the different gurus at the time and started thinking, boy, we ought to get on this train. So what we did to start was plain old, well, I shouldn't, but what we did to start was basically get together with the very small leadership team we had at the time and said, what do you think about this? And we talked about it and decided, why not? So we went to our staff and did a values clarification. And we really started out with, what do you believe? Do you believe people can work? Do you believe that, that people with disabilities can work? Do you believe our organization should do it? And each time there's a resounding yes, yes. And then we got to the organization, yes. Do you believe it's part of your job to help somebody with a disability? And all of a sudden you could see people start to look away because of the fear, because of all of a sudden it was real. So we kind of did that, and we're kind of happy with it. And then we sent people out and said, go back and come back and tell us of the 175 people here who can work. Don't think about funding. Don't think about parents. Don't think about transportation. Who can work? They came back with all but about 5 people they felt could work, which terrified us because we were on our way. That meant that we literally had to do it. So our decision to make the change, to really go on our way, was really an organization-wide decision that was really and truly run, or the ownership was with the staff. Because once they basically said, people can work, it's our job to help them, we started. Now, I'm telling you that in the 80s. I'm not sure that it's that different today. What I tried to do was to kind of keep it so that it was relevant, to today as well as before. We started at that point, what process resources did we use? We literally went back as a leadership team, and there were probably 5 of us then, we were much smaller, and kind of hid out in my office for the next day or two going, what have we done? And then basically we decided that we needed help with this, and at the time, there were and still today, it was the Department of Developmental Disabilities at the time. It's now the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. The director down in our area was very, very willing to help us. VR, we really weren't even talking to at that point, and they weren't talking to us. It was still too new for everybody. So we brought in Paul Wayman, we brought in some of his staff, we brought in Karen Flippo. We basically started looking at how are we going to do this. And so what I will tell you as far as process goes, if you don't have a plan on how you're going to do it, I will tell you that we came close probably to bankrupting our organization. We were in a 19,000 square foot building serving a lot of people, and if there's something that people should do, it's really look at the fiscal impact on organizations and look at it from a realistic standpoint. Because as we began to move people into the community and help them find jobs, all of a sudden the dollars were shifted from overhead cost here to cost here. And we sold our building. We really didn't have a choice because we couldn't continue to support 2 overheads. So I will tell you that the critical pieces in the process and resources that we used that made it work were leadership. The fact that we were all, as the, quote, people in charge, we were all totally 100% behind it. Number 2, our funding sources helped us. At that time, it was primarily the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. Our workforce board was actually more helpful at the time. And the school system, because we had, adults with disabilities money that were funding instructors in our workshop at that point, they transitioned to being employment specialists as well. Our board of directors, that was really kind of funny because we had a board of directors that was made up primarily of business people with some parents. And the comments that I got from the board, because we used all the words everybody did, least restrictive environment, we're helping people gain, get to their potential, all of those kinds of things. They said, oh, we thought you were already doing that. Oh, well, okay. And so it was easy kind of to convince the board it was a good thing. We did have a couple of parents who said, over my dead and mangled body, is that going to happen with my son or daughter? Okay, fine. So we looked at all of those folks, which I still think are part of the issues that we face as we look at transformation, conversion, whatever you want to call it today. So we basically looked at all of those and put together our 3-year plan. Our first job coach was our bookkeeper. She basically didn't like bookkeeping anymore, and we looked at, we basically said, who wants to do this? Because we felt if we started people who wanted to do it, that would be a lot better than forcing people to do it. So what we basically did was we met with each staff member, and we're much larger today. We probably had about 35 to 50 people that we were meeting with. And the first meeting we had, who wants to do it, it was like this dead silence in the room because nobody knew what it was. So we met then with each staff member and said, here's where we see you in this. Here's where we see your strengths. Here's where we see you might, need to have some training, et cetera, and we're prepared to do that. We had about a 56% turnover in staff over those 3 years. And it was fine because we gave everybody 6 months to find another job. We didn't fire anybody. 6 months, if you don't want to do this, we'll give you time, do it, et cetera. So then, and you notice I still haven't talked about people with disabilities because we still hadn't talked to anybody with a disability about this. We had people that said they wanted jobs, but we hadn't really talked to anybody. So we then had a parent meeting. Now, I don't know about you all, but we usually get the same 8 to 10 people at our parent meetings, out of 175. And they're always the parents who either love what we're doing or hate us. But we don't get that middle group. So we basically said, we're going to do this change. If you're interested in seeing how your son or daughter fits into this change, you should come to this meeting. Everybody came to the meeting. And basically, we talked in terms of what we were doing and how we were doing it. If you don't help parents understand about safety first, you're dead on arrival. And our message was, okay, we're just as concerned about the safety of your son or daughter as you are. And here's how we're going to ensure it. And then, we went through the rest of it. And we had again, parents who said yes and parents who said no. So the way our selection process went from the start was to basically work with the people that said yes, because we felt we had to have that level of support. We had to have people who wanted to go, as opposed to working with the highest functioning, the people, We basically looked at who had, and we still do that. If we have parents who say no, it's very hard because we've had families and group homes, et cetera, who sabotage for whatever reason. We've also had, we've had both, I've got 30 minutes, I need to keep going, never mind. So anyhow, we used every resource that was available to us. And then we finally decided, well, maybe it's a good idea to talk to the people we're serving. So we basically met and said, who would like a job in the community? Virtually everybody raised their hand. Now, what we were smart enough to realize was so many people had never been part of the community, they really didn't know. What kind of a job would you like? I want to drive a semi-truck. Okay, there's no way you're going to drive a semi-truck like a lot of people in our community, not just one person, but a person that has cerebral palsy and has issues with mobility isn't going to do that. So what did we do? We have a large company in our area, which is probably why he wanted to do it. He got to ride from Stuart, Florida to Miami, which is about 90 miles, and then back. And so he tells everybody that he was a semi-driver. He was the helper. He worked at Armalini truck lines for forever. We helped craft a job for him, and he worked there until his parents moved out of the area. So again, it's dreams, aspirations. I wanted to be a famous dancer. It's never going to happen, never. so it's really looking at dreams and aspirations, and then what can you do to help that person get there. So, so from a standpoint of the process that we used, we really looked at every one of our constituents, you know, who in fact do we need to influence. Business, we didn't have much problem with. We were already pretty well known. Stewart is 45 miles north of West Palm Beach. We served, up until 3 years ago, 13 counties with employment. We're now down to 5, just because of the economy and those kinds of things. Our state actually received in the second round of the state grants for employment, received a grant. And we were able to our organization got a grant as well. And that's when VR came into our world. And I will tell you that my goal as the director of our organization is to be everybody's favorite organization. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we try to say we hate you in, I would say something else, but it's not appropriate. We try to say, you know, those things in ways that they go, well, thank you. So, so we started working with Voc Rehab very early, and have had a wonderful relationship with Voc Rehab all the way through, a wonderful relationship with our Agency for Persons with Disabilities, and a wonderful relationship with other funding sources that help us. And the key to that is finding out what the funding source wants. And what we did basically was look at what they wanted and then gave it to them in their words. So that was probably one of the smartest things that we did and continue to do. As far as the negative and positive impacts, how am I doing? Okay. Okay. I'll talk faster. No. Again, the positive and negative impact. The negative truly was the fear. We were terrified of what we were trying to do. When we got ready to sell the building, I was probably the one that had the biggest commit. Now, we were in an old bowling alley. We were not in people who have built $2 and $3 million and $4 million buildings. You've got a different issue than we did. We were in a bowling alley. We had renovated it somewhat, but at that point we were Tri-County Tech. We had 4 names, and you know, we changed our name every 10 years or so. But the reality was that that people, where are they? Oh, they're in the old bowling alley. So everybody knew where we were. We were on US 1. We had a great location. Nobody ever stopped in. Nobody ever stopped in to see us. And we had rehabilitation in our name, so they didn't know what we were doing to who. So they were a little afraid of us. So when so that fear factor was big in there. I told you we lost 56% of our staff. We actually invented our own competition. Up until then, we were the only show in town. We served 4 counties, and we were it. Once we started talking about, and the worst thing we did was say we're going to close our workshop. Now, it's the best thing we did, but it was the worst thing to say. We should have said we're expanding our options over a period of years. This is what we're going to do, all of that, but we didn't. So we scared a lot of people. And now there are 2 organizations, the Goodwill and the ARC in our area, have very large adult day training programs, and we don't. So we kind of invented our own competition, which was a little scary and kind of still is sometimes, especially with the economy like it is. We also worried about our loss of identity. We were the group that worked with people with disabilities. That's how, in fact, even now when that's one of kind of the smaller parts of our organization, that's how we were looked at. We're back to that, but for a different reason and for the right reasons. And then the fiscal impact. Again, like I said to you, as you do conversion, and if I don't know how many people in here are fiscal or have to work with those kinds of things, but as you move, you know, you really have to take a look. We went from back then having a senior bookkeeper type position to a real chief finance officer. Now again, remember, we were much smaller. It's a different world today than it was in the 80s. But I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't put the exact same emphasis on the fiscal health of the organization as we did on the programmatic health. So we sold the building, and we moved into the Chamber of Commerce, the second floor of the chamber. We had 2 locations then, and the greatest thing about being on the second floor of the chamber, now there are only 2 floors, I'm not trying to impress you with anything like that, but the reality, 2 floors. So we moved into the second floor of the Chamber of Commerce. We had more visitors the first week that we were there than we did. All of a sudden, we were like everybody else. We were one of them, and them was now the business community. And we still are very much a part of the business community. And those of you, I mean, it's a different world now, and most everybody does it, but you know, we're a member of every chamber. We have a seat on our business development board. We belong to the economic development organization there. I'm on the workforce board, so we did everything we could to become a part of as opposed to apart from our community. The positive is it was the right thing to do. Talk about social capital for everybody. You know, as people began moving into jobs, into the community, they still, to this day, it just amazes me some of the jobs that our staff help people find and how they become part of that job. I'll go places and people don't speak to me because I remind them of where they were. I go places where people are so excited about their job, they can't wait to tell me. We're also big enough that I don't even have a clue sometimes as to who the person is that's talking to me. But the reality is that it was again, it was social capital for not just for the people we serve, because we talk so much about for the people we serve it's social capital, but also for our staff. Our staff now is more part of the entire community as opposed to just being part of this one organization that nobody knew about anyhow. Then our organizational chart. What we found is we got more and more community-based. We turned it upside down. So the people that we serve are at the top. The direct services staff are here because they're the ones that are doing the job. I don't think I've billed an hour. I can't tell you billed an hour. The last time I billed an hour or anything like that. And then the supervisory staff, and then there's a pivotal group that's myself at the bottom and our chief finance officer, our chief operating officer, and the board's at the bottom. They're the foundation. They're the ones that have to keep it going. Now, the board nobody was really, except for the direct services staff, were really thrilled with that chart. But it really was the way we were operating if you looked at it. My job is to support people now. And my job is for people not to be afraid of my title. So if they're working with the business, they're very comfortable coming into my office and saying, hey, do you know anybody here? Can you help? So that's one of the major things that we did that was positive. And we basically have grown our organization from that small organization